You're listening to LanguageCaster.com's Football Language Podcast. Hello everyone and welcome to the show for all those who love the beautiful game of football and who want to improve their English. My name is Damien and after a short trip to Spain, I am back in London where the weather is a little wet and grey, very different from the Spanish weather. What is the weather like where you are at the moment? Hopefully a little better than in Tokyo, where the other member of the Learn English Through Football podcast team, Damon, tells me that it is still very, very hot. Now, it's just me this week, and apologies for the slight delay in this week's podcast. We have both been quite busy at work, and I am recording this on Saturday morning after my weekly game of five-a-side football. In fact, a couple of my teammates are going to be representing the guests in this week's predictions, which we will look at later on in the show.
Hello, my name is Marcelo. I'm from Brazil. I'm a fan of Vasco da Gama, and you are listening to LanguageCaster.com.
Right, on today's show, we will be looking at some of the football language from the past week. And it's been a really busy week with lots of football being played all around the world. We'll start off with a look at some of the language from a Spanish second division game that I went to last weekend, before moving on to some words and phrases from Matchday 1 of the Champions League. While we will also have some language of predictions as we look back at some of the big games from last weekend. Let me tell you now, it was a bad weekend for me, so I am not going to spend too much time on the North London derby.
Hi, my name's David. I'm from London and I'm an Arsenal fan, and you're listening to LanguageCaster.com.
Now, some of you might know that I am a fan of FC Malaga after living in the city many years ago. In fact, I saw them play for the first time way back in 1987. Oof. Well, last weekend I had the pleasure of going to see them again in the wonderful La Rosaleda Stadium. The team has just been promoted to the Segunda División after a season in the third tier, and the feeling around the city is very positive indeed. They played so well in this game and defeated Huesca, a team from the north of Spain, by 1-0 to remain unbeaten at the start of the season. That's 5 games now, and their unbeaten start to the season means they are just outside the playoff places. Who knows? Maybe one day Malaga will be back in the first division again.
Hola a todos, estáis escuchando LanguageCaster.com.
Right, next up we are going to look at some language from the first set of matches in the new format of the Champions League. We'll be looking at the phrases league phase, baller, double save, gaff, and trouncing. League phase. Let's remind ourselves of the new format of the Champions League. There are now 36 teams taking part in one big league, so there is no group stage like in previous seasons. Remember that we had 8 groups of 4 with the 2 top teams qualifying for the knockout rounds. But this time there is simply one group or league of 36 teams. So we no longer talk about group stages, but instead we now use the phrase league phase. The top 8 teams qualify directly for the last 16, with the next 16 teams, that is, positions 9th to 24th, involved in playoffs to decide the remaining 8 teams for the last 16. The bottom sides are eliminated or knocked out, and they won't drop down to the Europa League either. Ballers. Damon was extremely happy with his side Liverpool after they won 3-1 away in Milan in repeats of two previous Champions League finals. That's 2005 when Liverpool won and 2007 when Milan won. He sent me a link to the Guardian newspaper report on the game, which used the word baller to describe some of the Milan players. So in this example, the writer uses the term ballers, which is a slang term that means someone is very skilled at playing sport. You might hear people talking about a baller when a player does something really skillful in a game, or simply to describe a really technically gifted player. Arsenal travelled to Bergamo in Italy to take on Europa League holders Atalanta in their first Champions League game this season and left with a point after a scoreless draw. That's 0-0. The hosts were denied all 3 points when they missed a penalty in the second half after the Arsenal keeper, David Raya, saved the spot kick. But he didn't just save the penalty, he also saved the follow-up header from the Atalanta forward Retegui. This is known as a double save and shows a keeper's agility and reflexes. Raya saved the first one to his right and then quickly jumped up to dive to his left to save the header from the rebound. A great double save that earned Arsenal a point. Goalkeeping gaffe. Continuing with words and phrases connected to goalkeepers, let's take a look at some language to describe errors made by goalkeepers. Blunder, clangers, and howlers are all errors or mistakes that keepers make that lead to a goal for the opposition. Another term we have is gaffe, and this is the phrase that many of the international press used when Girona's keeper, Paulo Gazzaniga, allowed the ball to slip through his hands in the final minute of the match with PSG. This goalkeeping gaffe gave PSG 3 points and left Girona, playing for the first time in the Champions League, still looking for their first point. Trouncing. The biggest win of Matchday 1 came in Germany, where Bayern Munich thrashed Croatian side Dinamo Zagreb 9-2. Bayern led 3-0 before Zagreb hit 2 quick goals early in the second half, and it looked like there might be a remarkable comeback. But the home side scored 6 more times to run out 9-2 winners. Other words to describe a big win like this include thrash and to give the opposition a hiding. Harry Kane scored 4 times to become the highest English scorer in Champions League football. And of course, the 9 goals meant that Bayern lead the Champions League phase after Matchday 1.
State ascoltando languagecaster.com.
You can find out more about some of the words and phrases that we have already discussed in today's show, as well as hundreds more football expressions and clichés by coming along to our football language glossary.
Je luistert naar languagecaster.com.
Okay, let's take a look at the predictions table, where Damon is in the lead with 20 points, followed by myself on 16, and our guests are in third on 11. Come on, guests. Damon scored 3 points when he correctly said that Real Madrid would beat Real Sociedad 2-0, while I managed to get the full 3 points from the Flamengo versus Vasco da Gama game, which ended in a 1-1 draw. No one scored any points in the North London derby, as no one went for an Arsenal away victory. As I said, a bad weekend for me indeed. Now, for this week's predictions, we have 2 friends from my 5-a-side team to represent the guest team. And in the first game between West Ham and Chelsea, they didn't manage to score any points as they went for a draw and Chelsea easily won 3-0. How about the other games this weekend? The Women's Super League in England starts, and there is a huge game between Manchester City and Arsenal. And I have gone for a 1-1 draw. The guests have gone for a 2-2 draw, while Damon thinks that Arsenal will win 1-0. Now, the two sides also meet in the Men's Premier League. This game is at the Etihad. Both Damon and the guests think that it will end in a 1-1 draw, but I think City will win 2-0. There is also a huge game in Italy when City rivals AC Milan and Inter face off. I think Inter will have too much for a struggling AC Milan, and I'm going for 2-0. What do you think will happen? Let us know by posting here or on our forum page.
My name is Theodora, I'm from Greece, my favorite team is Olympiacos, and you're listening to languagecaster.com.
And if you have any questions or comments about any of the language from today or indeed any other football language, then drop us an email at admin@languagecaster.com. And don't forget, we also have a football language forum where you can ask and answer any questions you have on the language of football and post your predictions there too. Now, we've had some interesting comments on the phrase the team is or the team are. And thanks PFS for your comment on that. We've also had a question on the phrases to be miles off it and what the French word for goalkeeping gaff is. Come along, take a look and join in the football language conversations. Oh, and don't forget YouTube as well, where you can find lots of our podcasts with transcripts as well. Spread the word and give us a like or a follow.
당신은 랭귀지 캐스터를 듣고 있습니까?
Thanks for that message, which was in Korean. We also heard some stingers in Dutch, French, Italian and Spanish. Thanks everyone for listening today. We looked at the phrases league phase, baller, double save, gaff and trouncing. Let us know if you hear these words in any language during this week's football. Don't forget, there's a transcript for this podcast from our site with lots of vocabulary support. Enjoy all the football this week, and we'll be back next week with some more football language. Bye-bye.